Why is intelligence attractive in theory, but threatening in reality? Smart is sexy, brains over brawn. I love deep conversations. You've heard it all before. But there's a silence hiding underneath that surface praise, a kind of unspoken discomfort. Because when a man isn't just smart, but deep, something begins to unravel. He's not throwing around trivia or witty one-liners. He's questioning everything, from love to morality to why we exist in the first place. Suddenly, that intelligence isn't just charming, it's confronting. You feel it. It's in the way he doesn't chase validation. It's in his stillness. How he listens more than he speaks. How his eyes don't just look at you, they see you. Not just the curated version, but the contradictions, the flaws, the illusions you've carefully built. And you start to wonder, is he judging me? Or worse, is he seeing something in me I don't want to admit? This is the hidden fear, not of intelligence itself, but of what true intelligence reveals. Unfiltered truth, emotional intensity, unpredictability. And in a world trained to crave comfort, that kind of man becomes dangerous, not violent, not cruel, just difficult to control. He doesn't play the usual games. He's not flattered by shallow compliments. He doesn't post for attention, doesn't beg to be liked. And this lack of social conformity, it makes him magnetic to some and deeply unsettling to others. Because to understand a man like this, you'd have to leave behind your scripts. You'd have to enter the raw, uncertain terrain of real human emotion. And not everyone is ready for that. You're not here by accident. Something in you is hungry for what the world avoids. Don't lose that. As Kierkegaard once said, the truth is a snare. You cannot have it without being caught. Intelligent men, the ones who seek truth relentlessly, are the ones who live caught inside it. And those who come close to them feel that same entrapment, a mental pull into the depths. He's not scary because he's wrong. He's scary because he's right, and right in ways you weren't ready to confront. So while intelligence might be praised on paper, in real life, it's the flame that draws you in and burns you just close enough to back away. But once you've seen that flame, you never forget it. To be intelligent isn't just to know things, it's to see differently. Most people walk through life wearing filters, social rules, romantic fantasies, collective delusions that help them cope. But the intelligent man? He sees behind the curtain. His mind doesn't just observe, it dissects, questions, unravels. At first glance, it seems like a gift, but look closer, it's a burden. He can't unsee the game of charm being played at every dinner table. He can't laugh at a joke that's built on ignorance. He can't nod along with conversations designed to avoid truth. And so, slowly, without even trying, he becomes the outsider. Not by rebellion, but by recognition. He doesn't fit because he refuses to pretend. Kierkegaard called this the despair of the self, a state where you know too much to believe, but feel too much to detach. You're not just lost in thought, you're caught in a war between truth and connection. The world begs for simplicity, but your mind demands depth. And when it comes to love, this becomes especially dangerous. While others fall into it blindly, the intelligent man stands at the edge, analyzing the fall. What is love really? Is it connection or projection? Is it unity or codependence? He doesn't feel less, he feels more, but questions every feeling to death. This is Kierkegaard's leap of faith. The idea that love, meaning, God, they can't be proven. They must be leapt into, without logic, without guarantees. But here's the catch. The more intelligent you are, the harder that leap becomes. Because your mind was built to analyze risk, not surrender to it. You've trained your brain to break illusions, not believe in them. So when something sacred calls you, a relationship, a purpose, a belief, you hesitate. Not out of fear, but out of principle. What if it's not real? What if I'm lying to myself? What if I jump and there's nothing on the other side? And this creates a strange energy. To others, it feels like mystery, intensity, distance. But to you, it's the weight of your own mind refusing to rest. Most people want clarity, But you live in the fog, not because you're lost, but because you know the world isn't as solid as it pretends to be. You're not cold, you're burning inside, but the fire is philosophical, and that kind of fire doesn't warm hands. It exposes shadows. So when people get close to you, they don't just feel intelligence, they feel unease, because you're not just challenging their thoughts, you're awakening something deeper, something they've spent years trying to avoid. Imagine being in love with someone who never lets you lie to yourself, not because they're cruel, but because their mind, their presence, cuts through illusion like a blade. There's no room for pretending, no room for the fairy tale. They don't ask you how your day was. They ask why you keep repeating the same patterns, why you crave validation, why you're afraid of being alone. They don't flirt the way others do. They challenge you. They observe your words like a puzzle, decoding your insecurities in real time, even when you're trying to hide them behind a smile. At first it feels magnetic. You say things you've never said before. You feel seen in a way that's rare. But then something shifts. The comfort begins to dissolve, and you realize this person doesn't just love you, they see you. And not the curated version, not the online persona or first date mask, but the shadow underneath, the fear, the contradiction, the loneliness. That's what intelligent men bring into relationships. Not just knowledge, but psychological X-ray vision. And for many women, this becomes unbearable, because most romantic frameworks are built on projection, on fantasy, on hope. But when someone exposes your entire emotional architecture for what it truly is, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like loss, the loss of illusion, the death of the fairy tale. Most people want a partner who completes the storybook, not someone who rewrites the entire script. And this is where intelligent men become misunderstood. They're not trying to ruin the magic. They're trying to find something real beneath it. They want truth more than comfort, depth more than dopamine, clarity more than chemistry. But that clarity, it comes with consequences. You can't unknow what they show you. You can't go back to normal once someone's held a mirror to your soul. So it's not the intelligence that scares people. It's what it does. It doesn't validate. It reveals. And in a world addicted to fantasy, to fast love and emotional anesthesia, being with someone who insists on reality can feel like drowning. Because when he looks at you, he doesn't just want your attention. He wants your honesty, your awareness, your accountability. And for many, that kind of intimacy isn't romantic, it's threatening. Not because he's wrong, but because he's too right, too honest, too awake. And being loved by someone fully awake means you can't sleepwalk through your emotions anymore. You either rise to meet them or you run. We live in a world where charm is currency, where the smoothest lie is often worth more than the awkward truth. In social spaces, from dating apps to job interviews, charm is mistaken for value, not because people are shallow, but because charm feels good. It's frictionless, it flatters you, it tells you what you want to hear, exactly when you want to hear it. But what happens when someone refuses to play that game? Intelligent men, the ones who live in their mind, often stumble in these arenas. Not because they're incapable of connection, but because they prioritize depth over approval. They speak in long, winding thoughts instead of neat sound bites. They don't mirror your opinions to win you over. They challenge them. They ask uncomfortable questions. They pause instead of performing. And in a society addicted to validation, this comes with a cost. Psychologists call it the likability penalty. It's the idea that the more competent and honest you are, the less likable you become, especially if you don't sugarcoat your truth. We say we want realness, but when faced with someone who doesn't need our approval, it feels less like a connection and more like exposure. Because charm hides weakness, but intelligence, when wielded authentically, reveals it. And in the dance of modern relationships, charmers get the first invitation. They flirt, they flow, they entertain. Meanwhile, the intelligent man often sits quietly, observing the dance, noticing the masks, too aware to join in blindly. He's not cold, he's calculating, not manipulative, but precise. And this precision doesn't sparkle in the spotlight because society doesn't reward thinkers, it rewards performers. People who can play to the crowd, read the room, and smile at the right moment. The intelligent man says what shouldn't be said, not for shock value, but because truth demands it. He points out hypocrisy. He questions tradition. He refuses to flatter mediocrity. And in doing so, he breaks the social spell. He disrupts the fantasy. This is why so many intelligent men feel invisible, or worse, disliked. Not because they're wrong, but because they're resistant to conformity. They can't fake interest. They can't laugh on cue. They won't dilute their thoughts just to fit in. And so they become threatening, not for what they do, but for what they refuse to do. They won't pander. They won't perform. They won't bend their truth just to be invited to the table, because their value doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being real. And in a world obsessed with charisma, that kind of presence is revolutionary and lonely. For all our talk of progress, we're still wired by ancient codes. Underneath every dating app, swipe, and candlelit dinner, biology whispers its primitive logic. Survive, reproduce, stay safe. And that's where things get interesting. Because intelligent men, they don't always signal safety, they signal depth. But depth can feel like danger. Evolutionary psychology tells us that women, more than men, have been hardwired to detect emotional risk. Not consciously, but through subtle cues. Can I predict this person? Can I rely on them? Will they protect or destabilize me? Now picture the intelligent man. He doesn't always say what's expected. He disappears into thought. He questions commitment, love, even himself. His loyalty isn't blind, it's philosophical. And to a nervous system designed for stability, this kind of presence doesn't feel like a home. It feels like a storm. That's the clash. Biology wants the provider, someone strong, stable, emotionally predictable. The one who shows up at 6, holds your hand in public, says the right things at the right time. The man who is known, safe, and familiar. But the intelligent man isn't that. He's not predictable. He's principled. He's not emotionally rehearsed. He's raw. His gift is insight, not routine. He sees too much to follow blindly. He's the one who asks, why are we doing this? What do we really want? And sometimes he doesn't have the answers. So the body tenses, the brain overanalyzes, and the heart retreats. Not because it's not intrigued, but because it's afraid of the unknown. Here's the paradox. Many women say they crave depth, but depth demands vulnerability. And vulnerability isn't safe. So what happens when biology wants security, but the soul aches for something real? Tension, fear, confusion, avoidance. Not because the intelligent man is wrong, but because he doesn't fit the ancient mold. He doesn't make you feel safe. He makes you feel seen. And being seen, truly seen, is one of the most terrifying forms of exposure. In a world still ruled by unconscious instincts, the intelligent man becomes a paradox. Desired in theory, avoided in practice. Not because he isn't enough, but because he's too much. Too real for comfort, too unpredictable for biology, and too deep for those still chasing certainty. We live in an age of infinite access, but limited attention. A world where love is filtered, curated, and compressed into 30-second clips. Where dating isn't about depth, but performance, and performance favors speed over substance. Scroll, swipe, match, repeat. It's not connection, it's consumption. In this world, intelligent men become invisible, not because they lack value, but because their value takes time to understand. And time is the one thing no one seems to have. He doesn't have a thirst trap Instagram. He doesn't post cryptic captions for attention. He doesn't flood your DMs with rehearsed lines. He watches, he listens, he waits. But that kind of presence doesn't play well in the algorithm. TikTok rewards reaction, not reflection. Instagram favors the bold, not the nuanced. And dating apps are built for the quick sell, not the slow burn. So the intelligent man fades into the background, not because he lacks depth, but because depth doesn't trend. He's not dopamine, he's serotonin. Long-lasting, subtle, harder to feel but impossible to forget. And that subtlety, it's terrifying in a world addicted to emotional fireworks. Because when someone speaks softly but thinks profoundly, you can't pin them down. You can't read them in a glance or sum them up in a profile. They feel like effort. And effort, in a world of convenience, feels like work, so people scroll past. Not because they're shallow, but because they're overstimulated. When everyone's chasing the next hit of attention, the rarest minds get lost in the noise. Many say they want someone real, someone deep, someone who thinks. But when that person shows up, unpolished, unreadable, unfiltered, they don't feel like the fantasy. They feel like a challenge. And challenges aren't fun when you've been trained to expect rewards without resistance. So the intelligent man, in all his raw, introspective presence, becomes the ghost in the digital machine. Not because he isn't wanted, but because the platforms designed to connect us weren't built to recognize minds like his. In a world where everything must be instant, the timeless becomes invisible. Some people light up a room, others expose the cracks in its walls. Intelligent men, especially those who live inwardly, often become mirrors, not by choice but by nature. Their silence invites introspection. Their depth forces confrontation. Their presence doesn't just reflect who you are, it reflects who you're pretending to be. This is where the fear begins. Carl Jung called it the shadow self, the part of us we deny, suppress, or ignore. Our insecurity, our envy, our shame. Most people spend their lives avoiding it, covering it with distractions, relationships, and curated identities. But an intelligent man, especially one who's done the work, has already faced his own shadow. So when he looks at you, you feel seen, not just in your strengths, but in the chaos you hide. And that kind of gaze, it doesn't flatter, it reveals. Being around someone like that can be deeply uncomfortable, not because they say anything wrong, but because their presence alone confronts you with yourself, your contradictions, your unresolved wounds, your unrealized potential. It's like standing in front of a mirror that doesn't distort, no filters, no angles, just truth. And truth, when you're not ready for it, feels like an attack. This is why intelligent men often trigger people without trying. They don't mock, they don't boast, they don't need to dominate. Their intelligence isn't loud, it's penetrating. It reaches into the subconscious. It disrupts false certainty. It breaks masks, and most aren't ready for that. So what happens? You blame the mirror? You say he's too much, too serious, too intense, too cold? But in reality, he's just clear. He doesn't reflect what you wish you were. He reflects what you actually are. And until you're ready to see that, he'll always feel like a threat. Not because he's dangerous, but because he represents the danger within yourself. In a world where people avoid their shadows, those who live in truth will always be misunderstood. Because to look into that kind of mind is to be reminded of how far you've strayed from your own. Being feared doesn't mean you're dangerous. It means you disrupt something. You challenge something. You carry a signal the world isn't used to hearing. In a time where conformity is celebrated as connection, you, the intelligent one, the overthinker, the deeply self-aware, will often feel like a mistake in the system. But you're not the mistake. You're the mirror no one asked for. And the world punishes what it doesn't understand. Kierkegaard spoke of becoming the self, not the self people want you to be, not the self society rewards, but the self that's earned through inner war, brutal honesty, and sacred solitude. That path is lonely, not because you're unworthy of love, but because your love, like your mind, doesn't fit into pre-made boxes. Most will never understand you. They will romanticize your mind, then reject its consequences. They will admire your insight until it makes them uncomfortable. They will want your light, but not your shadow. They will ask for honesty, but only in doses that don't touch their illusions. And that's not a tragedy. It's your test. The world needs people like you. Not because you make it comfortable, but because you keep it awake. Your depth is not a curse. Your intensity is not a flaw. They are the qualities of a lighthouse. And lighthouses aren't built for crowds. They're built to stand alone in storms, so embrace the silence. Sharpen the mind. Say what others are too afraid to speak. Feel what others are too numb to notice. And walk the path others abandon for applause. Because real power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being true. And in a world terrified of its own reflection, those who hold the mirror will always stand apart. Don't dim your mind to be loved. Don't fold your truth to be safe. Become so luminous, so radically awake, that even fear can't ignore you. You were not made to fit in. You were made to illuminate. And sometimes the brightest lights are the ones that make people look away, not because they're wrong, but because they shine too close to the truth.